Well, hey there, everybody. This is David from My Metal Today, and I'm continuing my series of talking with bands who are going to be playing Grillfest, which is going to be happening here really soon, actually. We're talking about a month and a half in mid-September in Utah. And today I have the band Arsenic Addiction, who is going to be playing that fest. And I'm going to hand it over to each of them and let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Haley Groh, aka Lady Arsenic, and I play keys, and I'm the vocalist.
I'm Nate Dahlquist. I play drums.
I'm James Kessler. I play guitar.
My name is Tyler Gibson. I am also a guitar player.
Very cool. Well, thank you all for taking the time today and taking the time to speak with me and talk about the band and Grillfest and all the kind of fun things that we'll cover today. The way I typically like to start these is, I'd like to understand a little bit more about how the band got started, or like what we like to call the origin story. So maybe you could walk us through, how did Arsenic Addiction get started? What was the origin story? And then I'm actually quite curious, what does the name mean? Where did that come from? So let's start with that.
So
We're the two original members of Arsenic. We started it back in 2006, and her and I have been playing music for forever. So that kind of started of an offshoot of like our first band that we were kind of trying to do, and changing the name from that band into Arsenic Addiction, and trying to get a little bit heavier music versus kind of like, back when we were kids doing covers of Evanescence and stuff like that. So
yeah, we all met in high school, and we were like, yeah, let's start a band, And as the band became more serious, we felt like we needed to actually have an image and a more unique name. So we came up with Arsenic Addiction because eventually we started to incorporate almost a vaudeville / Victorian morning stage show. So we all dressed up in Victorian morning garb. Each character had lore, and it was going to be a very conceptual band. So each album would have its own story beginning to end. I even wanted to go far as doing comic strips or things to go along with their lore. And eventually, after trying to get that off the ground, we had to take a giant break. And after that break, I became really different as a person. And I was like, you know what? I've been hiding behind this persona and the lore and the fantasy of all of it. I want to write music that is no longer just story or fiction, but I want to write real things. I want to write from my personal experience, and I've always been really afraid to do that, as I grew up LDS, so and still living in Utah, talking about being an ex-Mormon and the religious trauma. The brainwashing is very real in the sense of because I was always afraid to. I was like, oh well, I can't talk about it. There'll be repercussions. And eventually I was like, no, I need to process this. I need to find a way to let it go. And so I'm going to do that with my music. And so we decided to keep the name Arsenic Addiction as we made that transition, just because we had been around for 10 years at that point. And we were like, it'll be really weird and really hard to change our name and be like, we're all the same members, but it's a new name. So we just decided to keep it and transition anyways.
Was that around 2016 or so, approximately?
Yeah. So basically XIX was or 2019, yes, was our introduction to changing from the Victorian stuff into all right, we're going to write more serious stuff. And we've continued to make that transition. So.
Yeah, and Arsenic Addiction, when we came up with that, back when we were kids, the meaning of it was to be willingly or knowingly addicted to something is killing you, whether that's substance, whether that's a person. you know, whether that relationships or anything like that. It kind of came from that thing of like, or at least from my perspective when we came up with the name of like seeing someone that, you know, we've all known that person who is doing something that, you know, it's like, man, that's going to kill them one day. You know, whether that's a person that they're with or, you know, drinking or drugs or something like that. Not that we're straight edge or anything like that, but it was just definitely having that perspective of that. So that's kind of where the beginnings of that name came from. And then the meaning kind of transitioned for us later on from being, I guess, as literal as it was to...
Yeah, like with the Victorians and, you know, how arsenic was literally in everything from their fabric to skincare to wall paint, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so it really worked for us. Yeah, so now we have the name just for the name's sake, but we're a completely different band.
And it fits the Salt Lake thing, because if it ever dries up, supposedly the
We're
news
all
is saying
gonna
it's
die of
full
arsenic.
Yeah. Soon it'll be near. Yeah, soon people will all have arsenic addiction. So.
No, it's an interesting story, you know, and I'll be the first to admit I wasn't super familiar with you all when I first started looking into the Grillfest lineup and in talking to the different bands, and so it's interesting that you kind of almost have two halves to your story, and I transparently haven't heard anything prior to XIX, so I'm not familiar with that earlier era. One question I would have, though, you did introduce yourself as Lady Arsenic, so do you still kind of maintain the personas a little bit, even though you've kind of moved on from the, you know, kind of that in the music itself?
I mostly just mention it because people have referred to me as Lady Arsenic for so long that we have our older fans that will come up and still be like, Lady A, Lady Arsenic, and then our newer fans have no idea what that means. You know? So,
I got you.
So I just kind of introduced myself as both just to like not completely erase the past, but it's not a persona I pursue any longer as far as like this is the character, this is the lore. I mean, she's still a part of me, but now I'm more Haley. So
Yeah, that makes total sense. So we've heard from the two founders, but the other two guys on the interview here, like, how did you find your way into the band, and what's your story? What does that look like for you?
I'll go first since I came first.
Yeah.
So my good friend Brian, who was their drummer briefly, he makes all our music videos. He does all our photo shoots. He's still very much involved, but he started getting in really big touring bands, and he got really busy. And while he was playing with these guys after he recorded some songs, they got a big opportunity to play with Lamb of God and Behemoth, and he couldn't do it. He was on tour. And so he told them to call me up and fill in. And then I've just continued filling in. It's been like, 8 or 9 years that I've been filling in?
Just filling in, definitely, you know.
the permanent fill-in drummer.
Yeah. I think the term is called rent to own.
Yeah. Isn't that like squatter rights? You've been in the band long enough. You're no longer a fill-in.
Right.
I'm married now.
Yeah.
This shit is his.
Me. So I had been playing in bands since I was probably like 16 or 17. It's kind of when I really started getting involved, and I had been in a band for a long time, and then I had recently like taken a break from music for like a few years. And I actually, I think the first day they started recording XIX, I was moving into the house of the guy who was, his name's Randy Beesterfield. I was moving into his house like the very first day they were starting to record, which the recording studio was in that house. So I was,
oh wow,
oh cool, like hey, like it's good to see you guys.
He got
around,
to hear it whether he wanted to or not.
Yeah, so I was doing it, and so I had been living in the house that had the recording studio in it during their whole process, and then at a certain point, Randy was like, "Oh hey," like after they had finally finished the album and they were doing the album release show. And Randy was like, hey, they're doing the album release show. You want to go to that show with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I go there and I noticed that James is the only guitar player on stage. And I was like, I lean over to Randy and I was like, hey, I thought they had 2 guitar players. Like, where's the other guitar? And he was like, oh yeah, he quit like shortly after or something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you don't say. So probably, I don't know, maybe a week or two, I thought about it a little bit. And a week or two after that show, I ended up messaging James and I was like, hey, I noticed you only had 1 guitar player. I think I would probably be pretty interested in playing with you guys if you're interested in like getting together and jamming. I can't remember exactly how those conversations went, but at a certain point I came over. He was like, yeah, learn a couple of these songs, and I came over, and I think he was pretty impressed that I had learned probably 95% of the songs on my own, just being able to learn it by ear. And so we jammed through a couple of the songs I had learned, and I was like, yeah, this is cool, I'm down to do it. And we just kept playing, and eventually I was a full member of the band. So.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I want to add one thing to his joining. So
I was hoping to avoid this.
So our band is very, back when we did the Victorian stuff, we were very theatrical of doing, kind of tongue-in-cheek stuff. But now we're very, we kind of almost call it, thank you for joining the ritual, like being part of it with us. So we would do these, rituals on stage and stuff, and very, esoteric, kind of pagan-esque kind of things. And he was coming from a power metal band.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. We went out to dinner, and we're all hanging out, and we just like to give people a heads up because, we've had past members that when you tell them, hey, you got to dress up, you got to do the gig on stage, you have to fit in with us, you can't be, not doing that. It's all or nothing.
We're not a jeans and t-shirt kind of band.
We dress up, it's a full experience, and we tell people that because you see the light go out of their eyes sometimes, and they're like, oh, wait, what? And, cool, we're not going to have to, do sacrifices or anything.
No, rituals.
We're not going to do, real rituals, and we're like, no, man.
Well, I kind of thought it, I am a little bit more, I take things a little bit more literally. So, when there's, the rituals and, just so you guys are aware, I'm not, a religious or, spiritual person. So, if you're, if that's, a real, legitimate thing, you have to be, spiritual with the rest of the band. I was like, is that going to be it's kind of if you're not a vegan and you're dating a vegan, is this going to be a big deal?
Yeah.
So, but so I definitely thought oh, this band seems like they're really into the spiritual aspect of it because that's the front they put out, and I was like, hey, just so you guys are aware, I'm not actually a spiritual person. Is that a big?
I'm not into the cult stuff.
You sacrificing a goat or anything, right? That's how it kind of seemed at the moment. And we're just like, nah, man, it's just a show.
The rituals are symbolic. It's okay.
Yeah, okay.
That's funny.
Well, I didn't know what's the band that always gets a goat head out?
Oh, Watain.
Watain, yeah. They have dead sheep and goats on the stage, and so I didn't know what to expect.
Sorry, that was a fun story.
I do think that. I don't refrain from telling that story. I think it's a funny story.
Yeah, it is a fun story. And I mean, the reality is there is a pretty broad spectrum, across bands, right? There are some bands that take it very literally, and they're, doing it hardcore. And then there are plenty of bands that just do it for fun, or it's just part of the act, right? So, probably not an unreasonable question to ask. You do want to make sure you're comfortable, right?
It all means something, right? Like I said, but it's symbolic. I didn't want to leave one religion just to have to follow the rules of another. So I was like, I am spiritual. My music is spiritual for me, but I do not require my members to be you need to actually believe in all my bullshit. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, we kind of started to get there, so I'll kind of transition us into XIX. Album came out in 2019. It's clearly a transitionary album for you as a band from the more theatrical kind of older style that you were doing, which again, transparently, I haven't heard, so I can't even comment on what it sounded like. I know when I was initially doing my research, since I wasn't familiar with you all at all, a lot of descriptions I saw kind of described you as like extreme gothic metal. And I don't know that I 100% agree with that description, but I can kind of see where that comes from a little bit. There's definitely some goth elements. You definitely have the extreme elements. But maybe walk us through your approach to writing XIX and kind of what you were going for sound-wise, what you were going for thematically, and how that changed from the previous edition of the band, so to speak.
So exactly, that is a very transitional album where we're just trying to figure out our sound. Like, what do we sound like now? What do we want to sound like? We also were in transition with I just had a daughter during that period, so I had a baby, and some of the old members helped us write some of those songs, and then the new members came in, and with that you can almost hear the different influences. So it is kind of all over the place. And I was just trying to figure out what in this new era, what sound do I want to make to convey the message I'm trying to convey? And we used to be very our older stuff is also just kind of confused. At some points it was kind of new metal-ish. Growing up as a 2000s kid, and that's what introductory into metal was Kitty and Mudvayne and Slipknot and
Yep.
I didn't even know heavier shit existed. Anything that you could get at Hot Topic, that's how I got into metal.
Yep.
And so we wrote from that place, and then we had a drummer at one point that was more into death metal and thrash, so he wanted to bring more of those elements. And it was kind of each member had a different influence, and it was this struggle to find a cohesive sound. And so that album was really difficult to write, actually, just because creative differences. And then once we got new members and things were easier to write, the music already started changing. And so we were do we just release what we have and called an album? And so we did, because I have this problem where I want things to be cohesive, but if I waited for things to be perfect, I never release anything. Mm-hmm. So I was it's not as tight as I'd like it to be, but it is definitely growth from the previous music we were writing. It is in the direction I want to go in. So yeah.
With the sound of XIX?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I had two dogs that were just swarming around our
up
room.
in our space.
They'll put them in their crate because it's now for them. They're hey, we want to be in the interview too. But yeah, for me, from transitioning, we spent a lot of time looking for someone new to record with as well. Mm-hmm. We started recording with, I wasn't sure if you touched on that yet, but we did a single, a song called Black Mirror, and we actually started working with Randy Biesterfield in Beast Recording Studios that he has here in Utah, through our friend Brian Medeiros. And he like Nate was saying, he's the reason why Nate's in the band. He's the reason we work with Randy. He does all of our music videos and everything. And we did a song with him to see if we liked the direction and everything, and kind of adding more symphonic melodies and ear candy stuff here and there.
Yeah, it's our first time adding
real production.
Yeah.
And spending time figuring that out. And he's awesome to work with, and it's so funny because he's not a metal guy. If anything, I think he's kind of more like a pop punk kind of guy, or a indie hard rock kind of guy. But when we get in there, we all just start kind of gelling, and trying different approaches. So with that one, it was very much a whole different recording experience of trying to figure out how we were going to make that album, and also probably the most professional recording, you know. Like back before then, it was very much, you know, kind of sophomore albums of stuff where, you know, drummer doesn't want to record to a click, you know, no one wants to be in tempo. We're writing stuff that's not really being criticized by an engineer that's like, hey, those parts don't work, you know. And Randy really kind of put us under a spotlight of like, hey, those are cool spots, I hear what you're doing, but let's rethink them, you know. So there was a lot of fun rewriting in the studio, and a lot of fun writing with, you know, different musicians through that. You know, Nate came in and put his flavor on guitar, on drums and stuff, and kind of helped change how I wrote guitar. So it was, yeah, I think it was just a big growth period of being like how we did music for the first 10 years of Arsenic versus how we were going to approach music
In the future.
and for the in the future and the next 10 years of Arsenic. And it really has kind of pushed us to experiment, and we've always had a hard time of like locking down. We love so many different types of metal, of locking down what kind of metal we were going to play. I know that is off metalheads sometimes so bad.
They're like, you're not this or that, and I hate it. And I'm like, I know, but I can't. I listen to such a wide variety of music. Like, I love black metal, and we have some influences from black metal, especially currently. But I don't want to be a full-on cult black metal band. Like, there's 1,000 of those, and they do them way better than I do. You know what I mean? Like, and like my favorite band is Opeth. Like, so I love like progressive metal, and I'm kind of like a pop girly. So, like, our influences are kind of all over the place. But as far as like our new music is concerned, I definitely wanted to push it more in a more extreme, darker, more post black metal like influence, because I feel like that's what's going to convey the message of those songs better.
And I wanted to touch kind of on how you said like the description that you were seeing was kind of like this gothic metal thing. I think early Arsenic like definitely was that, but it was something that kind of carried over, that we kind of went along with the name more of that subgenre because it was the least offensive when we would get interviews and stuff, because people would be like, yeah, they're kind of like this melodic death metal / black metal band / you know, all these things, and in the comments
you're
you'd be
not
like,
real black
you're
metal.
not that. But if you put black and gothic metal, people are like,
Oh, okay.
we'll let it slide.
People get all up in arms about about genres, and you know, one thing that's I think it's been interesting about metal, particularly in the last 10 years, is that it just continues to broaden, and you're seeing so many different influences. Like, just a really simple example, I posted a review on my website on Thursday for a band called Fractal Sun. They're from Costa Rica, and at a high level, you call them progressive metal, but there's so much more than that. There's melodic death metal influences. There's like lots of like heavy djent. There's a lot of just more these really cool silky melodic passages. They bring in like jazz and swing at one point. That's like just insane. Like, if you've ever heard a djenty jazz swing breakdown, I never had until I listened to that album. And you know, but then I've reviewed a bunch of other prog albums this year that are just very different and sound absolutely nothing like that. Same goes for some of the power metal albums I've done. Same goes for some of the doom and melodeath. I mean, it's really interesting how that works. But you'll always get those people like, oh, it's not true black metal. Like, you know, it doesn't sound like it was recorded on my Walkman or, you know, my little boombox over here, and like, so it's not real. I'm like, you know, get over yourself. Come on. You know, that's the thing that's nice about metal, is that there's so many opportunities to do different things, and I've actually loved how the genres have kind of broadened their horizons over the years.
Me too, and I know it's a controversial opinion to say that I like new Opeth as much as I like old Opeth, because like I love to see like almost like the story arc of a band and how they've like transitioned from one thing to another as they grew as people, right? And so when people are like, well, they're no longer what they used to be, and I was like, God, I hope not. Like, because for me as a person, like, I take my music seriously, but I try not to take myself too seriously, because we're just goofballs at the end of the day, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so, and I feel like everybody in that band is very much the same way. Like, their music is serious, but they are not serious people. Like, so, and I like that they're willing to go out on a limb and like try different stuff, even when their fans are like, boo.
And to throw out like a counter example to that,
Yeah.
I was a really big Sabaton fan for a long time, because they're a power metal band, so it's kind of out of their scope. But they have become like almost all of their music is exactly the same. They're almost all the exact same lengths, and like that band hit like the thing that they thought was the most marketable music, and they stayed on that for the rest of the band's life, and they haven't grown at all. Like, well, they've grown popularity wise, but their music has not like differed from their one type of style. And now I just listen to like, I finally went back and listened to like the rest of their discography, and I was like, these are all the same albums. These are all the same albums. They all sound exactly the same, and I don't really like this band anymore, you know? So as a counter example to that, yeah, if a band doesn't grow, like at least with the type of music they write and like how they write, then you start to become stagnant, and it's not fun to listen to anymore, you know?
You know, it's interesting because, like, I think there are lots and lots of people out there who do want the band just to always sound the same. I mean, you know, I grew up, you know, 80s and 90s. You know, I graduated from high school in the late 90s, and you know, I will never forget just the outcry from people when Metallica changed their sound, and you know, and people were like, they suck now, and like they're not a metal band anymore, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, I thought it was cool to actually see them do something completely different. And it's interesting now, like some of that stuff that they were doing, even bringing in some of the orchestral and symphonic elements, has become like a common thing now, right? You know, and like that was kind of unheard of back then, and now it's like, you know, so many bands are doing it in so many different ways. But there were people who hated it. They're like, "Well, you guys aren't even a metal band anymore." And it's just it's funny how it can go both ways. I think my opinion is like, I love seeing a band grow. I may not always like the new direction they go in, and that's okay. You know, they're doing what they want to do, and you know, Sabaton, like, it's been crazy seeing them, you know, grow in popularity. You know, I think they have found a formula that people like. They execute it very, very well. I actually from like
good. It is very like they found that formula that works, and they stuck with that, and they haven't changed. You know.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to see them in England back in December, and I'd always been told, like, you know, you see them in, you know, the U.S. or Canada, and it's one thing. Because they can't bring everything. Like when they're in Europe, they get to do their set, and they like it's like a full setup, and that was an experience. I saw them in an arena. There were 8,000 people there. It was like going to a pop show, except I was watching power metal. I'm like, this is cool.
Yeah, awesome. That would be a cool experience. I also think it's okay to say that you like a band, and also like you don't have to like their entire discography. You can, like, a band can evolve from one era into a new era, and you come in at this new era, and you're like, yeah, I like this era, and then they can evolve out of that area into a new one, and you can be like, I'm not into that, you know, I liked this band during this era, and I think that's all right, you know. You don't have to. It doesn't minimize you as a fan of that band if you're not like 100% on board with everything too, you know. So
I agree.
Camelot, I like them during a very specific time frame, and before that I'm like, it's okay, and after that I'm like, it's okay, and so that's okay, you know.
There was a good one that I heard when we just Haley and I just got back from the Fire in the Mountains festival, and by the way. Anyone who's watching, if you haven't gone to that, you should go to that. It is an amazing metal camp, summer camp. Like, it's amazing. Everyone there is so nice. But like, we were walking down to go see Enslaved. And I went up to go grab our camping chairs because I'm old and tired and I wanted to sit down. So I'm coming back down with our camping chairs and this guy's walking up and he has his girlfriend with him and he goes, Enslaved has changed. And I laughed so hard. I'm like, oh no. You know, because
that's funny.
They're one of their last release, Heimdall, was like one of my favorite albums, and they have a song called Forest Dweller on there that's just like chef's kiss. It's so good, and they played it, and I got to see it live in the freaking woods. Yeah. So I was like, it was so
that's
cool.
pretty awesome.
Yeah, so it was so cool that like I was loving every bit of it, but that dude was not having a good time.
Yeah, I've never been to Fire in the Mountains, although it's been on my radar for a little bit. I was very fortunate that Psy and Dreadnought included Seattle on their mini tour post Fire in the Mountains, and seeing both of those bands live was phenomenal. Like Dreadnought in particular, talk about a band I'd want to see in the forest. Like just they have that whole like fairy atmospheric meets like almost black metal at times, and just phenomenal stuff. That was such a good show.
Yeah, awesome bands.
It is one. It's on our bucket list to play. So.
Yeah, I'm trying not to bug them too much. I'm like, hey man, Arsenic Addiction here, and they're like, shut up.
Yeah, they're just gonna be like, ugh.
I was like, please.
We'll be so good. We'll behave.
Arsenic Addiction changed.
Well, true statement.
The title of the interview.
Yeah. It changed, man.
See, I warned you guys. I go off tangent all the time, so this is just totally part of how we do these interviews. They're fun. So wait, to maybe get back on tangent for a second and wrap up the previous question before I move on. As far as XIX goes, I think James, you said it earlier. I think production-wise, it sounds really good. You could, again, I can't comment on the previous album, so I can't comment on how they did or didn't sound. But the production on that album is quite good. It definitely sounds well put together. I would agree with something that maybe Haley said earlier on, that I don't know that it really does sound that cohesive. It does sound like an album that you all are trying to figure out what you want to do, and you're bringing a bunch of stuff into it. I haven't listened to it enough to have a strong opinion. Like when I review an album for my website, it usually gets between 15 and 20 back-to-back listens for me, because I go very deep in my reviews. So I don't feel like I've listened to it enough to give a confident assessment in any way, shape, or form. But that was my initial kind of high-level assessment was, there's some interesting things going on here. Like I think they're figuring out what they want to do, and you kind of have confirmed that as well. So we'll put a pin there, but before we move on to kind of your next set of recordings, you started to talk about it. I'd like to know kind of what influences do each of you bring to the table? That's something that I'm always interested in, and I find a lot of times that can be really indicative of how a band kind of brings things together and kind of how you write, especially when you write collaboratively. So I'd love to hear from each of you. What are some of the key influences musically that bands, genres, etc., that you bring to the table?
Want to go first, Taylor?
Yeah, so...
I've already heard about what you don't like.
Yeah. So, as it kind of said before, Iron Maiden was the band that influenced me to start playing guitars, so Iron Maiden has always been one of my... actually, I would say has always been my favorite metal band. Mm-hmm. So I still have a lot of influence from them. And I initially got into power metal, and my first band was a power metal band that I was in for quite a few years, and then I took a break. I ended up leaving that band and taking a break, and when I came to this band, it was the first time I really started to dip my toes into death metal and black metal and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I liked death metal and black metal beforehand, but I had never played that on the instrument. So it was my first time really dipping my toes in with actually playing that kind of music. And so it took a lot of work to get out of the power metal mindset. So I'd come to the band with ideas, and I write a ton of music, and sometimes I'll sit at home for several hours just writing out music, you know. So I put down a lot of music, and only a certain amount I bring to the band. And so I bring ideas in the beginning. I'd bring ideas like, "Oh, what about this?" And they're like, "It's too power metal." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
There were a lot of gallops.
There were a lot of Iron Maiden. There was a lot of galloping,
A lot of horses.
and so I really had to like learn. Like it was a whole learning process of like, oh, okay, like I need to kind of be in like these spaces more, and so it was a lot of a learning process of what did work, what didn't work, and finally I've always been into like progressive metal too, and so a lot of like the progressive stuff I would write, they'd be like, yeah, that's really awesome, but when I'd go into like I'd throw power metal stuff and be like, no power metal. I've really started to like kind of find my groove. So like I'm really into a lot of some of the stuff that I think it's kind of more chordal stuff, but they put in a lot of like interesting harmonies in the chordal arrangements. So kind of like Rotting Christ and stuff like that. Some of the little bit more atmospheric black metal and death metal stuff have really started to influence what I write now.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've kind of been going through this whole journey of exploring, getting more in depth with more unique black metal and death metal kind of stuff, you know. So, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at currently. Is a lot of stuff like that.
Be curious before someone else goes, you know, what would you say maybe since like power and prog are still some of your primaries, and that's kind of where I reside a lot too. I think power and prog still tend to be my go-tos, even though I have a pretty wide listening, palette as well. Yeah. Maybe what are maybe a couple, power prog albums that have come out this year that have been like, whoa, these are really good?
It's kind of hard because I'm not really into that genre all too much anymore, and so I'm not really paying attention. To be honest, I'm not really paying attention to like the power and prog releases. Okay. So unfortunately, I couldn't tell you. I know when I think something sounds good, and I know when I'm like, nah. So, but I am more focusing on like black and death metal stuff. But I'm not really the type that's like, I don't really follow bands current releases and stuff like that. What I usually do is at work, I kind of just throw on YouTube and I find like whatever thumbnail looks interesting or the name looks interesting. I'm like, oh, Moss Giver, what is this? Sounds interesting, and I'd throw it on, and then I just sit and work while I have this playing in the, and if I think it sounds rad, I go I see if I can find it on Bandcamp, because I prefer to purchase albums through Bandcamp.
Yep.
And I try to, so I'm not really like, oh yeah, I'm following this band, I'm following these bands. Like, I'm kind of just like, yeah, I found this random album and it's freaking sick, and so I went and bought it, so I'm not really too much like a what are the current new releases type of person.
Got you.
Yeah.
Well, I will throw it out there. If you haven't heard it, go check out the new album from Power Paladin. It would be way too gallopy and way too whimsical for everybody else, I'm sure.
That's not for me.
But
I like power metal. I just don't want to write power metal.
Yeah.
I still really enjoy power metal. I still have like kind of a back project. That's all of my power metal stuff that I wrote for like a personal project that I've been sitting on, and I haven't, because I've been more trying to focus on this, I haven't really been writing much for it. But I have a pretty decent amount of stuff that I'd like to release for it. So
cool.
Tyler's power metal album coming soon.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out.
In about 10 years.
All right, well, we can move on from the power metal. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. I guess we'll just go this way.
Yeah.
So I'll wrap up what originally got me into guitar, and then kind of move into what I'm into now. But when I first started playing guitar, I was all about Metallica, Blink-182, Tool, all of those bands that were out playing, releasing albums and stuff when I was in high school. And so I loved Blink-182 because it was super, just funny. Low stakes, no nothing to it. But Metallica and Guns N' Roses and stuff, I loved growing up because the riffs. I've always just been, I love bands that have a catchy riff. And so I kind of got super into those bands for a long, long time. And then when her and I started playing music together, she was more into the heavier stuff. So we started doing Kitty covers. And I fell in love with the band Kitty, fell in love with the band Jack Off Jill, and we played a crap ton of new metal. So new metal was kind of my introduction into the heavier genres. And then we started doing Cradle of Filth and stuff like that. Dimmu Borgir blew my mind when I saw Progeny, The Great Apocalypse and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So transitioning from there to where I am now, of I still just love a good catchy guitar riff. So I love bands it's so funny because now I have bands that I love that are newer, but I still just love Black Sabbath. I still just love just 80s hair metal stuff because that's Black Sabbath and those guys are the era of what's the song about? I don't know, man, but that riff,
yeah.
You'll be singing it. So, yeah, I love anything that's just a really great riff. And my influences now are Opeth. I love Opeth, and I think I love them because they just release whatever the hell they want, and it's a conceptual album, and it's weird, and they add in really cool acoustic stuff, and they add in kind of jazzy aspects of stuff that you kind of mentioned that throw you off, where a weird samba part will come in. You're like, what the hell? You know?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. Opeth has been a big one. Emma Ruth Rundle, Haley introduced me to. I've noticed now, on top of just loving great riffs, amazing bands like Lamb of God, Killswitch Engage, and stuff like that have really fun guitar stuff. And probably one reason why I like black metal so much is because black metal and punk rock for me kind of ride the same line of it's not necessarily about what the song is doing in the movement, unless you're listening to symphonic black metal or something like that. It's about the mood and the sonic feeling that you get from it. So yeah, she introduced me to Ethel Cain, and I've been listening to that, and Emma Ruth Rundle, Chelsea Wolfe, and stuff like that. I've really dug sonically that those songs make you feel a certain way, which is usually just sad, but yeah.
That's my sad girl music.
It's her sad girl music. Right now I'm kind of where I'm at is I listen to a lot of I'll listen from anything from Emperor to Rotting Christ to Ethel Cain to Emma Ruth Rundle to some folky
St.
stuff.
Paul and the Broken Bones.
Oh, I love St. Paul and the Broken Bones so much. I love those guys, but they're like a funk band. So, but they do it for me. So I think I do most of the acoustic playing in the band, and I love that we can throw everything in the kitchen sink at Arsenic songs, and then sometimes we can just have something about just an acoustic and someone singing, and being just as heavy sometimes with the content that it's pushing out gets me really bad. So, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Man, you guys got me thinking about everything that's ever influenced me. I was just thinking of stuff that
recently
influences me in Arsenic, but I had a similar transition into metal that was very much pop punk. I credit Sum 41 and Linkin Park for my transition into liking heavier stuff. Going back and listening to the first Linkin Park album, I was listening to this in elementary school. That's crazy. And and then when I started playing drums, my friend who played guitar, my multiple friends who played guitar were just like, here, you listen to this now. And they're like, here's Iron Maiden and Children of Bodom and Metallica and like Pantera was a big one. That was all I was into for a little bit, was like, I learned every Pantera song on the drums. And then like I started getting into like Lamb of God, and I was obsessed with that for a while, and that was a big influence on my playing and my writing and everything. So it was like Pantera, Lamb of God was like the main influences. But then in more recent years, especially after getting into Arsenic, I'm way more into more broad, more atmospheric things. Like I love Alcest, and I love Opeth, Devin Townsend Project, anything Devin Townsend does pretty much. Those are all big influences on it. But then like the things I listen to the most are definitely Gojira and Mastodon. I love those bands so much, and Mario Duplantier from Gojira definitely influences my playing a lot. But like that and Opeth, I feel like are big influences on this, and then just, you know, good old classic Black Sabbath, like you said. Like, yeah, God, there's so many things that my mind's just been racing since you guys have been influenced my playing. It's crazy.
I know it's tough. You'll think about like 30 different bands after this thing, being like, I should have said that one.
Well, everything. You guys are all talking about bands like you mentioned a band. I'm like, I fucking love that band too. Actually,
Yeah.
But like that actually influenced my playing in Arsenic, at least, especially recently. I would say Gojira, Mastodon, Opeth, like anything that Haley tells us is inspiring a certain song, like I'll go listen to that and be like, okay, now I like this. Like so many black metal bands, and sometimes it's a little cheesier, like oh my god, what's the Candlemass?
Yeah.
Oh, getting some old Doom in there, yeah.
Oh my
Exactly.
god, their first album, that's like on repeat, like weekly for me.
It's a fabulous album.
Epicus, Doomicus, Metallicus. I'm like, it's so good.
Well,
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
so for me, like my most recent influences, like I said, I got into metal because of new metal, and like riot girl music, and just like very. So I had a boyfriend at the time who was in a metal band, like a new metal band. They wanted to be like Slipknot type of stuff, and I went and watched him perform. And instead of being a good girlfriend and being like, "Oh man, he's so cool," I was like, "No, I want to do that." And I can do that. So like, but at the time, like, there were women in metal, but it was kind of like a rarity, or like
It was niche.
it was niche, or
The genre was girl in a metal band.
yes, yes, or you were very much like it was more played as like a novelty, and I hated that. And so like bands that were kind of going against that grain, that had women in their band, like I was like, that's amazing. Like they were like, hey, no, like we're serious musicians, like take us seriously. And I love that metal as a whole, like that's becoming less and less of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's no longer female fronted metal band. I'm like, we don't say dude fronted metal band, you know?
Right.
Like, so I think it's awesome that it's become more diverse, like in so many ways. And so a lot of women in bands is what influenced me to start writing metal, like everything from Evanescence to Kitty to, like you said, Jack Off Jill. And as I got more into metal, and like I said, with the message I wanted to convey, and I found black metal, like I really connected with black metal. Obviously not knowing some of like the darker history of black metal, but like the music, like I said, growing up LDS and having all that religious trauma, and then finding this genre that is just like pushing back on Christianity, I was like, you can do that? And it was amazing that they were just like expressing all these raw, real things in like this crazy, angry, like you said, you can like feel the emotion in the sonic waves. Like it's not necessarily about the coolest riff or the most audible lyrics or whatever. It truly is like a feeling. Like, and what's funny is like black metal for me is kind of like white noise. It's like calming. I don't know if it's just the really high gain on their guitars, but I'm just like, my brain is quiet.
Trim it.
Yeah.
All the tremolo picking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just trim it forever.
Yeah.
Honestly,
so,
some black metal legitimately makes me sleepy.
It's sleepy,
Like,
right?
I could fall asleep to some black metal.
Because you're just like, yes. So that has influenced me more and more. And singer-songwriter stuff like Ethel Cain, like Chelsea Wolfe, King Woman, which she's like so doomy and like so emotionally raw. And I think those bands and black metal have a very similar thing, which just is kind of like that emotional heaviness, like from the vocals to the lyrics to the sound of the song in general. So I listen to a lot of Enslaved, a lot of Emperor. Like I said, Opeth is my favorite band. So I do love a good, just like melodic, proggy breakdown.
Yeah.
They're like, we're gonna do this for 7 minutes, and I'm like, thank you.
Would you like
5-minute outro.
Yeah, would you like a baseball organ? I'm like, I would.
Yeah, I would like that. To like having my eyes open to genre crossing, so bands like Imperial Triumphant, I think it's really cool that they blend like this Art Nouveau imagery with jazz and black metal. And then you have Zeal and Ardor that's blending like R&B and soul music with black metal, like and Satan, like. And I think that is so cool. And so for me, I want to blend kind of like Chelsea Wolfe, Opeth, and Emperor, like all in one, and I think a lot of post black metal actually kind of does that, like, where they take the melodic but still keep the rawness of black metal, or like the atmospheric stuff like Unrequited. Like, I think that is an amazing band that does atmospheric black metal so well. It's so melancholy, and yet at the same time you're just like, but it's also kind of hopeful.
Yeah.
Flora and Fauna was very much influenced by Alcest and Unrequited.
Yeah, the whole post metal scene has grown a lot, and it's a genre that I've gotten into quite a bit more, particularly as I've expanded mymetaltoday.com and started writing more reviews, in trying to expand my own horizons. I've discovered I've actually written quite a few reviews for a variety of albums in the post metal genre, and they can all be so different as well. There's a lot of interesting things coming out there. Obviously, Alcest is a really great example, and I'm quite excited to see them later this year with Mastodon and Death Haven. That's going to be a killer show.
So like we had tickets to see them in Denver, and I love Alcest, so I can't tell you how stoked I was. And I'm in the hotel room, like getting ready, and we saw on Instagram that their bus broke down, and so they couldn't make the Denver date. And
no.
So I still have yet to see Alcest, but I have tried, and I will keep trying. I just hope I can make it.
Yeah.
I hope nothing happens. Putting it out to the universe, I get to see Alcest. So.
Well, I don't know how close they are coming to you. They're actually not coming to Seattle, so I'm going to be in Europe at the end of September. So I'm flying via Philadelphia, and I'm seeing the Mastodon, Alcest, and Death Haven show in Philadelphia in September on my way out.
That's going to be amazing.
Cool.
Yeah. No, that tour's coming to Salt Lake. I bought tickets immediately.
Oh, I want to go.
No.
I'll be seeing Alcest via Nate.
But yeah, and it's kind of like talking about post metal is kind of an interesting, maybe transition into kind of where you've gone next. So, you have this EP that came out, last year. It's an intro plus 2 more full length songs, and I have listened to that one a good bit more. I've probably got 6 or 7 listens on that. 'Cause it's a little easier since it's shorter, obviously. And my initial reactions to that, besides the fact that it's obviously very different from XIX, is that you still have some of those kind of gothy, doomy vibes from the earlier stuff for sure. But there's definitely, it feels like it goes more into the atmospheric post-metal, post-black metal kind of arena. It's like, if I were thinking about, well, what does it remind me of? I think because of the dual nature of the vocals that you have on the album, I don't know if you know the band Evignot or not, but it reminds me a little bit of some Evignot, which is, they're not really post-metal. They're definitely a little more gothic doom. Really good. If you don't know them, you should go check them out. Their latest album that came out this year is phenomenal. But a little bit of Evignot, maybe a little bit of like a heavier Domain feel, if you know them. Like a little bit of, and I'm not even going to try to say the name because I always butcher it. They're a French-Swiss band. They're from the French side of Switzerland. Their handle on Instagram is dana.postmetal, DANA.postmetal. If you don't know them, go check them out. They're also phenomenal. It's like De being... I said I wasn't going to try. I'm going to butcher it. I love them, but I'm terrible with French, and I can never say their name. They're a band I want to go see as well. But like, those are some of the bands that were coming to mind as I was listening to some of the newer material, because of having both the silkier vocals, the more kind of almost emotional cleans with the sinister, vicious kind of black metal style vocals, and so that's what some of those bands kind of came to mind as I was listening to some of the new material. But what I'd love to know is, like, what was the kind of the motivation to move more in that direction? How have you gelled more in that direction? Because it's definitely very different from XIX.
Well, like I said earlier, it's definitely more of like the feeling and the message I want to convey, and I just feel like our old sound doesn't do that in the way I want it to. No, and I also no longer kind of connect with that style of music. Like, so I want to play what I connect with most, and for me that is a lot of like post black metal, and I've been a singer my whole life, right? And like getting into metal and learning how to scream, and then finding black metal and being able to, like I said, just like it's one of those things that I'm like, I'm gonna learn how to scream like that, and it's so cathartic, and it feels so good, and it feels so right. Yeah. And the sound I want, that I'm like, yes, like it is like very much just more of like an emotional thing. It's just what I connect with the most, and especially with the context of the lyrics, it's what is going to, I feel like, make the listener understand what the lyrics are about, even if they don't understand the lyrics themselves, like in sound and feeling. So
I think musically too, on that end, I think one of the biggest changes was XIX was primarily myself, Haley, and our old bass player that were kind of shaping that sound and kind of experimenting in that area, where these new songs, like, we've had a couple singles that we've released here and there, but even some of those dabbled around that era of when we wrote them. This is the first kind of bit where you got this version of Arsenic Addiction, where Tyler has heavily influenced the writing, Nate has heavily influenced the writing, our bassist prior, Sam, she influenced a lot of the writing. Mm-hmm. So we had all these new interpretations coming in there, and like on XIX, we challenged ourselves to write elements. So when you're listening to that album, we would go, what does fire sound like? What does water sound like? So that's why we have those ones on there. Because we were just kind of trying to challenge ourselves to, if you heard the song, it's like, okay, I hear it, Mm-hmm. And with this one, this next upcoming album, we challenged ourselves to write seasons. So the EPs and the singles that you've been hearing come out, they are our interpretation of seasons.
Well, and it's not just a challenge, it's because I am like a sad girl and I'll always be 7 feet deep, Like, for me, writing the elements is like, the elements are what everybody is made of, in the entire world. Like, and so I wanted to write the elements just to have that, like, connection with everything, like, around me, Mm-hmm. And then with the seasons, the seasons are more like my personal religion. Mm-hmm. Like, people like the seasons, people change, and nothing is forever, and yet everything comes full circle at the same time. And so I wanted to write the seasons, and just kind of like not only in their literal form, but in the seasons of my own life. So every song you hear that is a season is a different season of my life in meaning and context. So like summer is like a little more hopeful and a little more coming outside of like, you know, we're not young anymore, and like
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably the most it's probably the most like uplifting positive song I've ever written, like because usually I write pretty more like depressing and just about like anxiety and like suicide and kind of like those tougher subjects. And I got done with summer and I was like, how fitting that, you know, the brightest season is also like the most hopeful song I've ever written, you know. Vitamin D, go outside sometimes, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Grass, like.
So like, I think musically, we, with the EP that you're kind of talking about, we kind of have those vibes in there, trying to convey these seasons. But also, we kind of approached this upcoming album as kind of like a love letter to bands that influenced us. So Summer, you know, has those influences of, you know, Opeth, stuff like that in there. Just like little nods of stuff that, no, we're not Opeth, we're not making an Opeth song, but it has those influences there. The Harvest has, guitar-wise at least, I was influenced by Opeth and Chelsea Wolfe, and having kind of drony notes that carry on through a melody and everything. And then for Flora and Fauna, like Nate said, that was very much unrequited and Alcest and shoegazy kind of band, black metal. But we wanted it to be, you know, those nods to it. Summer being bright, hopeful, life, you know, spring, rebirth, everything. And then we had, you know, the Harvest is things starting to die. And we actually do have one more song to release to go into that EP before we release our album. That will be Winter, and that's straight up just black metal.
It is.
Oh, wow.
As opposed to Summer, it is definitely the saddest song.
So, but yeah, I think hopefully that answered your question, at least on my end. That's kind of where I think the big change happened, was having new members and having people all kind of have a say in which direction the song was going, but also using those influences to help channel us all into the same directions. We weren't writing 5 different songs, you know.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And maybe I'll flip the order of what I was thinking, asking question-wise, and just continue this thread. Like, what does that mean for, like, the next album? Like, obviously you released the EP. It sounds like you've got a lot of other stuff in the works. Is there a full-length album, you know, coming? You know, it's been a little while, you know, given that the XIX came out in 2019. So, like, what does that look like?
So, like he said, we have one more song to release that will go on that EP. So you'll have all the seasons together. And then we have a full-length album after the EP that will include those songs. We have another full album after that, which will be probably our heaviest album. So that will be very much influenced by death and black metal. And it'll have a little bit of like melodic and atmospheric black metal stuff in there, but for the most part, it'll be pretty the heaviest album we've ever written. And then we have an EP after that. So we've been really busy the past few years.
Yeah. We've actually, the reason why it's taken us so long to release stuff is because we actually we batch wrote a lot of backlogged music, and we wrote like around 20 songs.
Oh, wow.
And then we were like, okay, to try and get better with making albums consistent, cohesive and consistent. So we wrote like 20 songs, and we have like, we knew like, okay, this next album coming up is The Season, so the songs we wrote for Season specifically go in that album. But then like the rest of the songs are kind of like, okay, these songs fit with the next album, these songs fit with the second album that's going to come out. And so we had to go into the recording studio in 2 batches because it was so much music. But we have written and mostly recorded everything for both albums, and we just have like split them up. So that's kind of why we probably could have released an album 2 or 3 years ago if we just like, yeah, we wrote these 10 songs, we slapped them on an album, and we put it out. But we have written a huge amount of content that we're just now getting to the end of that. Maybe like another 6 months until we're like really to the end of that process, and then we're going to be releasing like, okay, we have this album that's coming out. Now we have like a next album that's like coming down the pike, you know. So it's been a ton of work.
That's why we've released like 7 or 8 singles since that album too.
Yeah,
it's to be like, we're not dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one reason why we kind of did it that way is like we're an unsigned band, so everything that you see like that's released from us, you know, merchandise, albums, music videos, it's all from in-house. You know, we have to fund all those, we have to come up with the concepts, we have to create them and stuff. So we've realized that the more successful you are at releasing songs is based on how long you've had it and you've had time to promote it and put it out there. So we decided that we were going to do basically the 2 albums, so that while we're creating, because we love making music videos, it's one of our favorite things to kind of put the visual to it, and we get to, while we're piecing together the next album, we get to create content and create videos and create art for the album that we'll be promoting and touring for. So it was kind of a way of going like, dang, this is really expensive, we need to spread it out so that we can really give each thing the proper attention and time that it deserves, rather than trying to shell it out quickly because we want to release the next album. So conceptually, you know, the albums XIX, the album we're going to release, and the following album all coincide together almost in this Holy Trinity kind of life cycle form, where it's almost like birth, life, and death kind of thing. That's sonically how we're trying to portray the music to show that.
That's also like being unsigned and making our own schedule and all that kind of stuff, making sure stuff is done. That's also why we haven't released our winter song yet, because we were gonna release it end of last year, and we were gonna shoot a music video for it, and then we didn't really get a winter, so
we had no snow in Utah.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, the whole motivation for this interview, of course, is your guys' Grillfest appearance. And so, like, what I'd love to know is, how did that come to be? And then, what are each of you most excited about for Grillfest?
So how did us being on Grillfest come to be?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think, Grillfest was kind of a thing amongst a lot of the local bands here. And it used to be in a backyard, right?
yeah. Our buddy Brendan Green used to have it in his parents' backyard that was like kind of built like a little amphitheater, and it was literally just, it was a free event that we all just showed up to and played and used home, you know, it was all DIY with our own PA system and stuff, and like I still have the speakers that we used the last couple, and there were just a bunch of grills and people brought meat and grilled and drank beer, and that was the whole thing. Like, it was just an all-day thing in a cul-de-sac in Sandy, Utah. And then John Yelland for years wanted to like bring that back because he loved that. Mm-hmm. But he wanted to make it like a real like big event at a venue and everything. And it actually, even Brendan had talked about doing that years prior, like trying to do it at like Barbary Coast or something like that, like someplace that could be like half indoors, half outdoors. And so John for years was like, hey, if I brought this back, like, would Arsenic want to play it and all this stuff? And So I know that John just maybe came from nostalgia from playing that, because like he played it a few times at least with Dysphoria, and he just wanted to turn it into like a bigger thing, and so that's how the event came. And then I think that part of the reason why we got to play it was because of that, because he knew that at least Tyler and I had played like the backyard grill fest things that we'd done before in other bands. Like I had played it in 2 of my bands, he played it in one of his old bands, and so did Brian. Brian played it in one of his bands, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think, so last year was the first iteration of it being in a venue and actually being a festival like put on, and John put a lot of work into that. And I think it always kind of stemmed of being kind of like, I think he even says it in his interviews and stuff, that it's like a family reunion thing. So he reached out to us and wanted it to be a big communal thing of all these bands getting together, and we're hanging out, we're playing music, and it's a celebration of art and music and friendship and support of the local community. And we were invited last year. We had a great time. I think it went really well. And we were happy enough that he invited us back this year to play again. So, yeah, in the conversations I've had with John, he was like, yeah, it was great, would Arsenic want to be part of it again? And yeah, of course, like, we think it's great, we think it's awesome. Like, I really do think it has the potential to be a really great festival, and honestly, the only, like, all ages festival in Utah put on by the local community.
Like metalheads.
Metalheads, and put on by the local community, and he's bringing in some great bands from out of town and around the United States, and I think even from out of the country. I think there's one this year.
Yeah.
So the way it came around is just John's a friend of a lot of the members in the band and invited us to come back, and very nice of him to do so.
And also a semi-brag of mine too that I think helped is that my band Hissingen, which includes Chad from Dysphoria and Judicator, and Christian, who's done sound for them, and who helped do sound and stuff at the old school Grillfest. Our band Hissingen might be the only band that has played this new version of Grillfest and the old version of Grillfest, because we also might be the only band that still exists from that era.
Oh, cool. And
Yeah,
what are
for the all ages aspect?
Yeah.
We don't get to play a lot of all ages shows. So it's really fun to, we have a 12-year-old daughter, so it's really fun to make her come listen to Mom and Dad be weird, on stage.
Yeah, she saw us on stage for the first time last year at Grillfest, and that was a really special moment for us to look over and see her. She dragged 2 or 3 of her friends with her.
Oh, cool.
What is this?
Yes, so just have their faces be like,
I know they had hoodies. I'm like, where'd they get those? They all had Arsenic Addiction hoodies. I'm like, back there just stealing from our merch.
Yeah, so I think that's really awesome. Because like I said, there's all ages metal shows here, but there's not like an all ages metal festival that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah,
so.
like this is that's the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
cool? And anything?
To like play with all. I feel like all the bands on the bill they're just fun, and they're just nice people, and so it's just like awesome to be able to like get everybody in the same place and like just chat and hang out and see what everybody's up to, and like
Yeah, it's a pretty great lineup. A lot of good bands on the bill for sure.
Yeah. I think we're a little bit of like an odd man out as far as genre goes, but that's not ununique for us. Like, like we usually play a lot of shows we have no business playing, but we do it because it's fun and there are bands we want to play with. So it's like no, I like listening to these bands. So
one thing that is cool, and I've seen this in other fests that have maybe been more traditionally power or heavy metal festivals, is that they are branching out a little bit more and including things that aren't necessarily like traditional heavy metal or power metal. and Grillfest is no different. I mean, obviously, I definitely would agree. Arsenic Addiction is maybe one of more of the outliers, but you think of a band like Darkonigan, that's almost doing like suffocation style melodic black metal. That's definitely different. They're really good too, by the way. If you haven't seen them, I got to see them at the Battle of the Bands a couple of years ago, competing for Mile High Power Fest, which unfortunately got canceled and seems like it's on its way out. But Darkonigan, definitely would be another band that'd be a little bit different. Even a band like Triune is quite a bit different, kind of like that psychedelic extreme prog metal. So you got a lot of different things going on. I mean, you still have Judicator, you still have Adamantis, you still have Shadow Strike. Like those are definitely in your face, like speedy power metal with all the elements. So you definitely have a good flavor of that too. But I think it's kind of cool to see the mix of genres. And like I said, I've seen the same at NABA Power Fest. I've seen the same at Prog Power coming up, where you definitely see bands from various genres. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool to expose people to other things that they may not normally listen to.
I totally agree. That's actually how I prefer festivals, because like I said, I don't listen to one genre of music, so to have a festival that's like, this is all black metal, I'm like, by like the fifth band, I'm like, I'm gonna go, So I love like when that festivals are starting to mix it up, and it's no longer like it has to be this or that, because I think variety is the spice of life. So it definitely helps keep my attention.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, any final thoughts from you all before we sign off here?
Well, I know basically like there aren't a lot of power metal bands out here, and I think that one of the reasons why John ever even thought to include us in anything to do with Judicator is that we are similarly theatrical. Like power metal is very theatrical, and so are we. We dress up and wear makeup every chance we get.
Yeah. I think last thoughts are, keep supporting local music if anyone's watching this, and please make it out to Grillfest. It deserves to be supported. It deserves to be something that I think will grow, and the bigger it grows, the cooler the bands that they'll be able to bring and kind of introduce you to more and more music across the United States and across the world. That, I mean, is never a bad thing. So
yeah, plus one to that. There's one common theme I have on almost every interview that I do is, go support live music, go support, live bands. I mean, you all know as well as anybody that, doing this is really hard to make any sort of money whatsoever. And, if you like a band, buy their merch, buy their physical media, buy a t-shirt, buy a hoodie, if they have patches or pins, like whatever stuff they have, go buy something, or at least at a minimum, go see them live, go buy a ticket and go to their show. We all know nobody makes money off of streaming, and so it's really important to make sure that, if you really like a band, find other ways to help support them. And that's that's a big reason.
The game.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah.
You guys are making money?
Yeah.
And even if I can say it too, like, let those bands know that you like their music. Drop a comment in their social media pages. Like, those simple acts of kindness mean a lot, because this stuff is hard. This stuff it's hard to put yourself out there, and it's hard to create. And when you try to do it in a professional manner, it costs money, and sometimes just someone being like, man, that song rips, I love it, or anything. Those, if you can't buy an album, those things help. Support all your local music and your local artists.
It's a big reason why I do My Metal of the Day as well. Same thing, is I'm here to help bands, get any exposure I can give them. Hopefully introduce them to new listeners. It's like I want people to find music that they love, and it's a fun way to do it.
Yeah, no, and thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all the coverage you're giving all these bands, and especially, the festival and everything. It's awesome. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun to do it, and it's been really a pleasure talking to all four of you. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this today. And, I guess as we sign off here, it's just everybody just stay metal.
Stay